Hi, my name is Thomas Maggiola. I am a second-year student here in the Latin American Studies program, doing my MA here at UCSD with a concentration in history. For my thesis, I am researching the role of transnational linkages in the Guatemalan Civil War from 1960 to 1996. Specifically, I look at a range of networks and interactions in which the Guatemalan left participated in or otherwise interacted in with during this time period, and I consider how these interactions shaped the strategies and goals of the guerrilla movement in Guatemala, along with their engagement with the rest of the world. In conducting the research for this project, I traveled to archives in the US, as well as in Mexico and Guatemala, where I looked at a wide range of documents coming from both the Guatemalan guerrilla organizations themselves, as well as other actors in solidarity coming from primarily the US, but also Western Europe, in places like Mexico and other areas in Latin America. And essentially, what I found here was that in the first 2 decades of the Guatemalan Civil War, the guerrillas were very much in touch with global currents on the left. These people traveled around the world. They studied at home, but also traveled around to get further training in countries like Vietnam or Cuba, for example. And kind of this global engagement manifested itself in certain ways, such as the early preference for Folkismo as a kind of theory of revolution, and how they attempted to implement that in Guatemala, although unsuccessfully. In the late 70s is when we start to see a shift in the global engagement, when we see shifting circumstances both at home and abroad in terms of the increased state repression under the Lucas Garcia and Rios Montt administrations, as well as the 1979 Sandinista victory in nearby Nicaragua. Both of these events brought a lot more international attention to Central America as a whole, and particularly to Guatemala. And as a result, the Guatemalan insurgents saw it was particularly an apt moment to open up what they called the International Front, where they started publishing internationally oriented newsletters aimed at garnering support from solidarity audiences in the US and in Western Europe that could provide both material support for their operations as well as provide political pressure on, for example, the Reagan administration, whose interventionist policies in the Third World were heavily criticized by the revolutionaries. Forward from the program, I plan to continue working on and researching the transnational components of Guatemala's civil war, although I plan to shift my focus to the refugees that left Central America in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, and eventually made it to Mexico. And I plan to research the ways that they interacted with and navigated local, national, and international power structures since leaving home.